And welcome everyone to this week's episode of Craze's Corner. No Will or Jeff today, so it's just going to be me. Going to be going through some rookie report cards, talking about how these rookies have performed so far in their rookie season, as well as what their dynasty value is going to be like going into next year, and really for the future, how I look at these guys, what kind of tiers they fall in, and which guys I would take of this rookie class, which guys I would take over each other. So I'm going to start with quarterbacks, then we're going to go into some running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. Full show for you today. Again, no Will, no Jeff, but I promise to bring you all of the content that you guys are looking for. So we're going to start us off at quarterback. We got Jackson Dart, obviously has been the best rookie quarterback so far that we've seen. He's so far played in 8 games at the time of this recording, and he is the quarterback 16 in fantasy. 1,500 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, or 3 interceptions, 11 touchdowns through the air, 7 more on the ground with almost 350 rushing yards. So you're looking at a guy who's been able to put up a lot of numbers with some injuries that New York has been dealing with. Hasn't been great without Malik Neighbors. Scadaboo's gone. So he really has put up some really good numbers with subpar weapons, which does make it exciting for his future. He runs the ball, which is one of the most important things for fantasy football quarterbacks. However, for dynasty's sake, when we're looking at this, 3 years down the line, if Jackson Dart keeps playing recklessly like he has been, he's going to be concussed multiple times. He's going to have injury history. We've seen that be the downfall of some of these rushing quarterbacks' injuries. And we've seen concussions kind of be a really big thing that's caused some people to retire early, like Luke Kuechly. He's already had 1 concussion so far this season. And if those keep stacking up, he's going to have to fix his play style. You can still run, but maybe you just slide a little bit earlier. Do something so that you aren't taking these big hits, run out of bounds. But for Dynasty, I think that his rushing upside makes him a top 12 quarterback for sure when you're looking at startup rankings. He's a guy that I think if you're rebuilding would be a great guy to have as your quarterback 1 or quarterback 2, depending super flex. It'd be great to have him on your team. He's going to be a guy that has a lot of value. But like I said, the injury concerns do kind of keep him from being like a top 5 quarterback for me. I think that he's got, the chance to be a top 5 quarterback if he can stay healthy. He can be smart, and the Giants can put a new team around him. So we'll see what they decide to do with their head coach going into next season, what the play calling looks like. But I think Jackson Dart is a guy that I have a lot of excitement about going forward. He's just got to make sure he can stay on the field. A quarterback I do not quite have as much excitement for going forward is the number 1 overall pick, Cam Ward. The Titans are currently sitting in spot to have the number 1 overall pick again. He's only had 7 throwing touchdowns, 6 interceptions, hasn't really done much on the ground. So for Cam Ward, he doesn't really have the weapons around him to be good, which definitely doesn't help his case. He kind of was put into a bad situation. The Titans had the number 1 overall pick for a reason. But he's made some good plays and shown some flashes, but it's been very inconsistent. And for me, from what I've seen on the field, he can be, I think he can evolve into being a game manager, pocket passer in the right system. If you were to put him in San Francisco as the backup for a few years and let him take over in Kyle Shanahan's system or in Sean McVay's system where they can scheme the wide receivers open, they have the talent around him and the play calling and the coaching staff, I think he could succeed in that situation. However, in Tennessee, I don't really see Cam Ward being able to kind of reach into any sort of fantasy football relevance being a pocket passer. So for me, Cam Ward, if I have him in Dynasty, I'd be looking to try and trade him either for another quarterback if it's a super flex league. Maybe you can get an early pick and take one of the quarterbacks that are going to go in this draft, or a 2027 pick if you're really doing a rebuild and you want to kind of try and go for that class, which should have a lot more talented quarterbacks in it. 2 quarterbacks. We got a lot of running backs here. We got 6 running backs. We'll start at the top. Ashton Jeanty currently sits as the RB13. He's 635 on the ground, 3.5 a carry, which has been kind of disappointing, 8 total touchdowns. But he's been doing it in the receiving game, 43 receptions for 250 yards. So that part has been a very big part of why he's the RB13. if he wasn't getting the receiving game, it kind of feels like a disappointing season for Ashton Jeanty because he was drafted so high. He has the entire backfield to himself, but the Raiders' offensive line has not been good. The offense in general has not been good, so the scoring opportunities haven't been there. But he's been good. He is a great running back. He's shown it. He can break tackles. He can run through guys. He can do it out of the backfield, catching the ball. So I really have no worries for Ashton Jeanty himself. My worry is the team around him. They already fired their OC. We'll see what Pete Carroll does this offseason, if he still has his job. But that situation kind of concerns me more, so I wouldn't quite put him Bijan level yet. Just for Dynasty, Bijan and Gibbs are, that level. I think he would be in the next tier just due to the situation around them. Bijan does have, a guy underneath him with Tyler Algier, but Bijan still puts up great numbers, and they can run the ball behind the Falcons' offensive line. They just haven't been able to get anything going on the ground in Oakland or in Las Vegas, so hopefully they can fix that. And then we'll move on to Browns running back Quinshon Judkins, currently the RB 18, which is pretty good considering he did not practice all offseason. Then he comes in week 2, 25% of the snaps, and he looks good. He's got 750 yards, 7 touchdowns. Not quite doing it the same way in the passing game as Ashton Jeanty, but that's kind of the Browns. Now they got Shedeur in there, not really getting too many dump-offs to the running back position. But Quinshon Judkins has looked great. I would put him, I would love to have him on my Dynasty team. Him, Omari, and Hampton are kind of together for me. Omari and Hampton obviously has been dealing with injury, but I really like both of the players. And I think that they're in situations where they're going to be the guy for the rest of their rookie contracts, and I see them getting high-paying first contracts. So I think for Judkins, Jeanty, and Hampton, I really like what they've shown me so far on the field. They're all super talented backs, and I think that their teams are going to utilize them properly. Jeanty, we'll see when that's going to be. I think that they don't necessarily even have to utilize him properly. They just have to get him some people who can block in front of him. But I do like all three of those guys in Dynasty. If you have them, keep them on your team. Even if you're rebuilding, you don't have to just trade them away because they're a running back. These guys are going to be good for 3, 4, 5 years. They have the draft capital invested in them, and I think those are really good cornerstones to build your Dynasty teams around. Jeanty this year, again, he is the highest of them, but he has been a little bit disappointing just due to the low rushing. But I like all three of these guys. TreyVeyon Henderson's the next name I want to talk about. We're kind of getting down this list here. He is the RB19, and he's only started 4 games when Ramondre Stevenson was missing. He's really been doing it in the passing game. They've been able to get him the touchdowns when Ramondre hasn't been playing. But my issue with them is that Ramondre is there. They get Jennings involved. So for Henderson to be into that tier with Judkins and Jeanty, he has to get more volume. And I think that Vrabel is quite happy to just use Ramondre, use Henderson, and have them both out there. And that really hurts Henderson's fantasy value. Dynasty-wise, Ramondre is still under contract. So when we're looking at what does Henderson look like on this team in 2 to 3 years, I think the talent for sure is on his side. I think that you're going to be kicking yourself if you don't have him in the game more than Ramondre. I think Ramondre has also dealt with the fumbling issue. And this Henderson is a guy that Vrabel brought in. Ramondre was already here. So I do think that Henderson is going to be more involved and kind of be that running back 1 where Stevenson will take the step back and be the RB2 next season. I think that TreyVeyon, he's been really good at everything when he's been on the field. He's been explosive, which helps to bring up his yards per carry. He's done it in the passing game. Like I said, when they've given him the volume, he's been great for New England. So I think that you're probably not going to get too much volume for the rest of this season. So if you got a guy in your league who has Henderson, who's nervous about the fact that he's been splitting pretty much with Ramondre Stevenson, Henderson would be a guy I'm targeting. He's a guy I traded for in one of my Dynasty leagues where I'm rebuilding. Traded away a couple older guys to get him, added him to my team. I'm quite happy with him going into next season. I think he is a great RB2 to have in your dynasty team. I wouldn't be quite so happy with him as my RB1 just because of the volume. But as an RB2, I think that you're looking at a guy in TreyVeyon Henderson who has immense upside if they just give him the volume, which I think they will start to do next year. A guy who's currently getting the volume would be RJ Harvey. So we're looking at RJ Harvey here. He is in this weird spot where he really didn't get to play too much earlier on in the season. So him being RB25, almost an RB2 on the season, and J.K. Dobbins was the RB1 for this team for majority of the season. Looking at RJ Harvey, he's been able to do it a lot in the passing game. He's been that passing down back when J.K. Dobbins was kind of running for the first two drives. Harvey's been used out of the backfield in the red zone as well. I do have some concerns with RJ Harvey's dynasty value, despite the fact that he's looked good on the field. Number one being Sean Payton likes his running back by committees. Even go back to New Orleans, he had Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, albeit that was a really great offense and both of them had their value. We still need to see that development from Bo Nix before this offense can really take that step forward. The wide receivers, they need something to kind of push the passing game forward so that the running game can open up. Like I said, they've been fairly good this year. They have, the second or third best record in the league, which is fantastic. And Harvey down the stretch is going to be a great running back to be able to put in your lineup without J.K. Dobbins there. But the Broncos spent all of last offseason trying to find themselves a running back, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do find themselves another running back going into next season. He is a second-round running back, so maybe they do have that draft capital invested, and he can be the RB1 in a committee going into next season, which is kind of what I would say the most likely outcome is he's the RB1, but even with that being said, they'll bring someone else in. And right now, he is the RB1 without J.K. Dobbins, and they're still getting Jaleel McLaughlin and Tyler Bidet involved, which does hurt his upside of being an every down back. So I think that that's not really what RJ Harvey is going to be able to do in his career in Denver. I think he's going to be a guy who, again, if you have him as your RB2 going into next season, he'll probably be the 1A for the Broncos if you believe this offense can take a step forward. And, you don't want to see them take a step back, that's for sure. So if they can take a step forward, RJ Harvey is the guy that I would be happy with as my RB3, I think is where I would feel comfortable just because I think they bring someone else in. Monongai with the Bears currently sits as their RB28. Him and Swift pretty much split carries evenly last week. Both of them scored, and they ate up the Eagles' defense. But with him, he's a 6th-round pick. I don't think the starting running back for the Chicago Bears is on their roster. This year, they save money by cutting DeAndre Swift, and this offensive line has been so fantastic. I think that the Bears will look to bring in a running back. When you look at their offense right now, they have stud wide receivers, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore. They have Luther Burden. They have 2 tight ends in Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland, who we'll talk about here in a bit. So you really have weapons through the passing game. Your weakness right now, despite last week, is the running back position. Caleb Williams has looked okay this season so far. He's got a low completion percentage. I believe it's in the 50s. And, Rome Odunze's catchable ball percentage has been very low. So that is a little bit of an issue with this offense. But Ben Johnson's been scheming this running game very well. The offensive line is probably the best offensive line in the league right now. And those two things make for value at the running back position, no matter who you put out there. But I haven't really been blown away by Monongai at any point, and I haven't really been blown away by Swift either. Like I said, they saved $7 million by cutting DeAndre Swift next season, and I think that if you're looking to upgrade the Bears' offense, other than changing the quarterback, which they're obviously not going to do, I think getting another running back is their best option. Ben Johnson had that in Detroit. They had Montgomery. Then they go out and they get they get Jahmyr Gibbs, and Gibbs is now the RB1. So that's kind of what I see with Monongai, where if you have him, I would be looking to move him in the offseason, especially if he gets a lot more carries throughout the rest of the season and into the playoffs. If he gets and has a few more big games, I think coming out of the playoffs, he's a guy I'd be looking to move just because I'm scared of what the Bears will bring in. And if they bring in a free agent running back or draft a running back in the first couple rounds of the draft, I think Monongai is going to be a guy that you probably his peak value was at the end of the season or now even. Another running back I just quickly want to touch on, we already talked about him a bit, is Woody Marks. With Joe Mixon missing the entire year, Woody Marks has been great for Houston. However, Joe Mixon will be back next year, and I don't think that the Texans have that full commitment to Woody Marks to be a fantasy relevant guy. So if you can move him to a contender now for a second round pick, that's a move I would make to move off of Woody Marks this season. But now we're going to get into the wide receivers. The most important position here for Dynasty really is the wide receivers. These guys are guys that are going to be on your team for, a good wide receiver can have a 10 to 12 year span where he's giving you consistent fantasy value. And that's something that we'll talk about here with 4 rookie wide receivers. Not quite as many as the running backs. This was a stacked running back class, but I got 4 I want to talk about, starting with the guy I'm wearing here, Tetairoa McMillan. Currently, the wide receiver 7. That is a bit inflated because the Panthers are currently on bye this upcoming week. So he'll probably won't be a top 10 wide receiver after the bye. However, he's got 57 receptions, 826 yards, and 6 touchdowns. The Panthers' offense in general has been a little bit inconsistent. The play calling from week to week has been hot and cold, and that's related to Bryce Young being hot and cold depending on how the play calling has been coming in, the game script. But the Panthers have been able to put together a competent-looking offense for most of their games so far this season. They beat the Rams. They put up a bunch of yards against the Falcons. So looking at Tetairoa McMillan as the wide receiver 1 going forward in this offense, which I think he is, I continue to be a Bryce Young supporter. I think that he's a guy that you can kind of continue to build with. He's a guy that's taken a lot of step forwards last year and even more this year. He's kind of got the Panthers in playoff contention right now, which is a place where a lot of people didn't think they would be. He's had a lot of haters, but if he can be that guy and continue to take those step forwards, now with Tetairoa McMillan, Leggett, Jalen Coker, and kind of get to build this offense around, I think that Tetairoa McMillan will be a very, very valuable dynasty wide receiver. He's a guy that if you have him as your wide receiver 1 in a rebuilding team, I think that's okay. I think he is a top 12 dynasty wide receiver. And if he's your wide receiver 2, I think that's even better. If you're contending right now, he's a guy you can play. And if you're playing for the future, he's a guy you would want on your team. So Tetairoa McMillan, for me, is the best wide receiver of this class. He's the guy I would want on both my dynasty teams and on my redraft teams this year too. I think out of all these guys that I'm going to talk about, he'd be the one I would want the most. But the guy who's currently competing for Rookie of the Year, I think between the two of them, it's going to be Egbuka or Tetairoa McMillan. So Emeka Egbuka is currently sitting at the wide receiver 9. Probably will surpass Tetairoa McMillan this week for fantasy playoffs. Coming into that with more being higher on the season, he's got 52 for 806, so pretty much right there with Tetairoa, and he has one less game because of the bye. So Egbuka, you're looking at a guy who's really been thrown into action more than I think a lot of people expected. Mike Evans has had injuries. Chris Godwin was out for most of the start of the season. McMillan also has been out. So Egbuka has been able to get the volume and the targets that no one really expected him to get this season. And when he's done that, he's looked great. The issue for Egbuka and why he isn't higher currently is that Baker Mayfield, I think, had a stretch during the season where he was very hurt. We just saw him have the shoulder injury a couple weeks ago, and I think he was hurt before then. He was missing wide open passes. Egbuka's had some targets that have just not been catchable. I think that will go away into next season. He'll be tied to Baker Mayfield and this offense. We'll see. They paid Chris Godwin. Maybe they'll bring back Evans as well. But I think that is just where Egbuka right now doesn't have quite as clear a path to the future targets as Tetairoa does. So I think that's kind of the thing you're looking at between these two guys is Tetairoa. I think he's going to be tied on this team to Bryce Young for a long time. I don't know how long that Egbuka will be, or how long until he'll be the clear number one target in this offense if Mike Evans is here next year. I think he'll be the target over. Maybe he'll have higher targets, but Mike Evans will see those red zone touchdowns. And that'll kind of take away from him being a true wide receiver one. I think Egbuka is still a great wide receiver two to have. He would be probably in that wide receiver 15 to 16 range for me in Dynasty. I think that he's a guy that probably has a lot of value. He's a guy I'd be looking to try and flip into a Justin Jefferson right now who's struggling. Or if you have him, I'm quite happy to have him on my team. Like I said, if they don't bring back Mike Evans, or Chris Godwin really doesn't come back out, and then this is Egbuka's offense going into next season with Baker and Irving, I think that Egbuka, really the sky is the limit, and him and Tetairoa McMillan will be competing in the same division as each other for the next at least 4 years. They'll probably both get their fifth-year options, franchise tag, contract extensions. I think they're both here for the long haul. So I think that these guys are going to kind of be compared to each other throughout the rest of their careers, and I'm excited to see how it pans out. We got a couple other wide receivers here that I want to talk about. Not quite as big of a name. Just some guys I wanted to quickly touch on. Travis Hunter in Jacksonville. He got injured, obviously, on IR, going to miss the rest of the season. He did start to get more involved in the offense. And Brian Thomas Jr. has been struggling. For me, Travis Hunter is kind of an anomaly because we don't know how much offense or defense he's going to be playing. He was playing more offense near the end where he got injured, which is great for fantasy, but he still has those defensive snaps, which aren't quite as fantasy relevant unless you play in an IDP league. If you play an IDP, Travis Hunter, probably the number one wide receiver on this list going forward if you play IDP, and you get those points as well. And you can start him at your cornerback position. He'd probably be the guy you want, but if you're not playing in an IDP league, I think that Travis Hunter is going to be maybe the 1B in this offense. I do think Brian Thomas Jr. will come back next season. So you're looking at the 1B for a Trevor Lawrence-led offense. He probably would be a top 24 wide receiver in Dynasty for me just because he is super young and he's very talented. Could he overtake Brian Thomas Jr.? Possibly, but I don't think it's quite as likely as the other guys who already have those clear paths to be the wide receiver ones in the future. And then Jayden Higgins and Jalen Noel for Houston. I like Higgins has been doing pretty good. He's been able to get himself more involved in the offense, especially with Nico Collins missing a game. And now with CJ Stroud being back, I think that Higgins is a guy that if he can prove to really what he's going to be competing for is they're going to be able to get Nico Collins on the outside. So he's got to be that wide receiver 2 this year. Tank Dell will be back with this team eventually. So then he'll be competing to be that third wide receiver on the field. I think he can be it. He's a guy that has been good on the field so far. 32 catches, 359 yards, and 4 touchdowns. But I think he's more of a stash, a guy who you've got on your bench and you're quite happy. If you got a taxi squad, you can put him in your taxi squad for next season. Keep him there, let him kind of develop in this offense, see what they do at wide receiver with Dell coming back, see how that looks in the offense with Collins. Hopefully CJ Stroud can take the step forward, and hopefully the Texans in this offseason, they look at themselves, they're like, all right, we've got the skill positions figured out on this offense. Let's address the offensive line. And if they can do that, I think that's a big thing for CJ Stroud. And if CJ Stroud is going to get back to where he was in his rookie year, putting up fantasy relevant numbers, I think that Jayden Higgins and Jalen Noel possibly each could have some fantasy value going forward. So take whichever one you like better and try and get them on your Dynasty roster. And then we got 4 tight ends here. I got about 6 minutes. I want to have this under 30 minutes for you guys. We got all these guys to talk about, but 4 tight ends. Not too much to say about them. I think a lot of them are kind of self-explanatory. Tyler Warren, tight end 3. He's been great. Daniel Jones has been looking for him. He's been, honestly, exceeded my expectations for what I thought he would do this year because Daniel Jones has looked so much better than I think everyone expected, and Anthony Richardson hasn't been able to play. So Tyler Warren, for me, he is probably one of the top Dynasty tight ends, and I would say with Colston Loveland, who right now has had a very inconsistent season. As we talked about the Bears a little bit earlier, they have a lot of mouths to feed in this offense, and Caleb Williams hasn't been great, but I think him and Warren have both proven themselves on the NFL field that they are just as talented as we thought they were coming out of college, and I think they're both top-end dynasty tight ends. If you're rebuilding, Loveland's a guy that you could have on your roster, a guy you might want to try and go out there and acquire. Currently a tight end 21 on the season, so not quite as important to contending teams. Warren you can have on contending teams, rebuilding teams. He's a guy you want no matter what your team looks like. And then we got Gadsden and Fannin. Fannin, tight end 12, Gadsden, tight end 20. Fannin really fits with the way that the Browns are going to be going moving forward. I don't think their current starting quarterback for next year is going to be on the roster right now. I don't think it's Shedeur or Gabriel. I wouldn't be surprised if they draft another one high in this draft. However, Fannin is the younger, David Njoku. I don't think Njoku will be on this team next year. They've been involved in trade rumors forever. I think he'll be on his way somewhere else this offseason. So Fannin is a guy who, if you have him in a rebuilding team, that's good. If you're contending and he's your tight end 2, I think you keep him. Let's see what the offseason looks like. But I think Fannin could be the Browns' tight end 1 going forward. And that has been, historically, when David Njoku's played, has been a valuable spot. So I do really like that pairing of Fannin in this Browns offense going forward with Judkins. I think those two are going to be the guys that they build around. They really need to bring in some wide receiver help for whoever their next quarterback is, but I do think that they have the tight end position on lock. And then Gadsden, he's kind of been in and out of your lineups. It's been a little bit more inconsistent than you would like, but he's in a similar situation to Loveland where they just have a lot of guys that they can throw the ball to in LA. They have Keenan Allen, Ladd McConkey, Quinton Johnston, and then Gadsden really has broken out. I believe he was a 5th-round pick in the draft this year, so he's exceeded expectations for sure. He's a guy I would like to have on my dynasty rosters going into next season. We don't know if Keenan Allen will be back, and I think that he has really earned Jim Harbaugh's and Greg Roman's trust in this offense, and I think he's going to be that tight end that they've been looking for. They paid Will Dissly, brought in Tyler Conklin, and I think Gadsden's really the guy that has done everything they wanted from him. So he's the guy that I would want to have on my roster going into next season. I think that he's a guy that maybe doesn't quite cost as much because he's had some down weeks. Maybe that continues for the rest of the season just because of all the weapons they have there. Justin Herbert now with the broken finger, I believe, on his non-throwing hand, or a broken part of that hand. So it's not quite as throw heavy as they might be getting Hampton back now. So when you're looking at Gadsden, I think that he's a guy going into next season, might be a little bit cheaper to acquire. And I think that he's a guy that I would definitely be looking to acquire. So there we go. We got some rookie report cards, talked through most of the top talent in this year's rookies, I guess. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you guys learned something. Hopefully you can get some of these guys on your dynasty teams, whether you're competing or rebuilding. There's rookies for you. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you again next week.